Today, we have the great privilege to welcome Professor Gershon Eck, Senior Research Associate at the Global Risk Mitigation Foundation. Professor Gershon Eck is a leading authority on China's political warfare. In his book, Political Warfare, Strategies for Combating China's Plan to Win Without Fighting, he clearly defines the CCP's goals, strategies, and tactics toward democracies without using conventional force. Drawing from extensive field research, his work offers sharp insight into how China penetrates media, government, and academic institutions. Welcome, Professor Gershon Eck. It's so wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jasmine, very much.
As we just mentioned about your book right here, and this is the one in Mandarin version, and this one is the original version. In your book, you mentioned how China's political warfare through goals, strategies, and tactics since 2020. Now, 5 years from 2020, now in 2025, do you see any changes or any advantages that they've proven since then?
Yes, on the Taiwan side, there's been some progress, immense pressure from the Chinese Communist Party, of course, on Taiwan during that time, much more. On the U.S. side, not so good. And I'll talk about both in some detail in a moment. But first, let's define for the audience what is political warfare. So in the American perspective of it was devised by a State Department official named George Kennan back during the first Cold War. And that definition is very simple. It's political warfare is all means that a country uses short of mid-intensity kinetic conflict to achieve its political objectives. Pretty simple. It's everything short of mid-intensity conflict and its kinetic conflict. From the Chinese Communist Party perspective, it includes violence. It includes revolutionary wars, which they have initiated a great deal of since they won the Chinese Civil War and then instigated many revolutions and insurrections around Southeast Asia, Africa, and then South America. They even assisted there. It includes terrorism, but it's everything to include psychological operations, legal warfare, media warfare, co-opting the media, having their own massively funded, massively resourced media operations that get into the heads of their audiences, cognitive warfare, where they actually seek to control your brain, my brain, the brains of everyone watching this program today, and their children, and control what you think and how you think it. And then to destabilize that brain, to attack the brain as well. That's all part of cognitive warfare, which your country, which Taiwan is focusing on a great deal these days. So the span of political warfare is very broad, and from the Chinese Communist Party perspective, it also includes the military intimidation that's going on, the circumnavigation of Taiwan with their aircraft carriers, their aircraft, their live fire, combined arms training exercises. That's all part of the terror that they're trying to instill in the people of Taiwan, and the intimidation to, and here's the goal, divide, demoralize, and disintegrate, to use the CCP's term, the people of Taiwan. So that's a quick overview of what political warfare means. Now, how are we doing? Taiwan is setting the gold standard, along with President Lai here and President Marcos in the Philippines. Both presidents have said we're going to fight. As a matter of policy, we are going to fight the Chinese Communist Party's political warfare. Why? It's fairly obvious, but for the benefit of those who question, everybody does political warfare. What makes the People's Republic of China's political warfare any better or any worse than the political warfare that the United States and the democracies used to win the first Cold War against the Soviet Union? Mm-hmm. Well, the difference is the nature of the regime. You always have to look first at the nature of the regime. The Chinese Communist Party, Jasmine, is an expansionist, militarily and economically powerful, Sino-fascist, genocidal, totalitarian regime. Nobody in this room with us right now, nobody watching us at this moment wants to live under a mass murdering, brutally repressive regime like the CCP. No one wants their children to grow up under the jackboot of a repressive genocidal regime like that. No one wants their grandchildren to grow up in that. That's why your president has said we'll fight, and President Marcos has. In the United States, by contrast, not such a good story. 5 years on from when that book was published, we still don't have a clear policy that we're going to fight like we did in the first Cold War with Kennan's definition, and then President Truman through President Reagan especially coming up with strategies for winning the war, going on the attack and winning in the political warfare battlefield. We don't have that.
But they do seem to be very infiltrating in different places, especially how the recent impact of Taiwan's failed recall campaign. A lot of people in Taiwan think this massive failure of the recall movement is a sign that the government stands toward China. Its attitude might, maybe it's different from the public opinions because a lot of those are pro-China legislators, but some said it's just because a lot of people, they didn't really know what they would want, but they don't want more violence in the political warfare. So what do you think on this failure of recall campaign?
There's a number of local factors that played into that. Some say that, well, they didn't, the people didn't support the government's stance that we're going to defend our sovereignty and our freedom and democracy. I don't think, frankly, the people who did not support the recall are eagerly awaiting the day when the People's Liberation Army marches into Taipei. Obviously, that Beijing had a big stake in the outcome of that recall. What the other points that the people of Taiwan and those who supported the recall, who were trying to keep Taiwan from committing national suicide. And I say that because the Chinese Communist Party uses democracy to destroy democracy. Okay? So they're going to use our institutions. They're going to turn them against ourselves. We're going to, in this case, you've got legislative logjam designed specifically to bring the government to a halt, to bring defense to a halt. Again, there's a lot of factors that play into what is happening right now beyond the scope of this interview. But the point is, you're heading for national suicide. They're setting it up so your own institutions are used to sabotage proper functioning of government, proper defense of your government on all levels, not just military, psychological defenses, resilience, resistance, the capacity of all your government ministries to operate, your local governments to operate in the event of a crisis. If that is all paralyzed through democratic processes, you've committed national suicide in the name of democracy. No one wants that. Things change. So I wouldn't be too pessimistic, and I especially wouldn't denigrate the views of the people, the good people of Taiwan, about them being ready to give up at this point and not support the government taking a strong stand on defending their freedom and democracy. Wow. Things change.
Things change. And I also like to dive into what you just mentioned, that their tactics might be using democracy to turn against democracy. Right. As I like to cite what you cited it, that in your book, scholars mentioned that China has shifted their tactics from winning hearts and minds towards fostering instability and undermining democracy. About that, what's the change behind that mentality? And also, speaking of what we just discussed about now, Taiwan's political environment is very, very polarized. And is the environment now playing more in favor for China, even though, as you just mentioned, and as I believe, I don't think most Chinese people would be going to the other extreme, but this political environment is very different now. Would it be in favor for them?
I'll answer your last question first. Of course it is. Of course, this is the basis for cognitive warfare that is being waged by the CCP against you. And And again, good leadership on your government's part that you've recognized cognitive warfare, the effort by the CCP to control your brains. Very advanced, uses technology. It's different than other forms of information warfare. They literally seek brain control, and they'll damage your brain through something called neurostrike if they can't get you to think the way they want you to think and act the way they want you to act by taking control of your brain. It's much more complex than that, but again, in this short interview, let me just say that cognitive warfare is designed to exacerbate that polarization that you just alluded to. Taiwan is polarized, America's polarized. If we both go down that route, eventually we'll self-destruct. There's got to be some sort of meeting of the minds that says we're self-destructing by fighting each other, and we're being manipulated by a regime that wants to annex us, take away our democracy, take away our freedom, and make us a province of the People's Republic of China. So let's stop what we're doing. That's idealistic, to think that parties as divided as the three parties that are running the country now are right now. It's idealistic, it's aspirational, but you've got to do it, and America's got to do the same thing, because otherwise the CCP uses cognitive warfare like acid. They will pour it on those existing fissures, that existing divisiveness, and it will just corrode you even more and more, and that will demoralize people. Get back to your early question. They did give up on winning hearts and minds. They know they're not going to win that because every poll shows that the younger generations do not identify with being Chinese. About 3% of the people identify with being Chinese in the sense of mainland, or not mainland, but People's Republic of China Chinese. That's not going to change. That's going to continue to be, they're going to continue to diverge from any affinity with being Chinese. So what do they do when they can't win your hearts and mind? They'll beat you into submission. And that's through cognitive warfare, political warfare.
In your other book, it's called Media Warfare, Taiwan's Battle for the Cognitive Domain. You noted that Taiwan is aware of course, the actively influence of China's media influence toward Taiwan. So what would be your advice for Taiwan to strengthen in case of information security and also the public resilience toward it?
You've already taken a number of steps. You're holding news organizations accountable. You've passed laws equivalent to the U.S. Foreign Agents Registration Act. You're able now to prosecute. You're able now to investigate because you have better training now. Think back. You were fine in terms of defenses against political warfare and then what is now called cognitive warfare through the authoritarian regime. It was in the 2008 to 2016 time frame that the floodgates to the PRC, floodgates for PRC political warfare, the Ministry of State Security, United Front Work Department, the massive academic infiltration here, that floodgate was opened under President Ma. Okay, he blocked the intelligence and law enforcement from investigating Chinese espionage and infiltration. A massive number of exchanges, academic exchanges. When you send these young PhDs who never done nothing most of their life since they were in preschool, and kindergarten, and then K through 12, and undergrad, and then graduate, and then getting their PhDs, they've been in the classroom all their life. They're socially a little bit awkward. They're not really worldly, and yet we're suddenly sending them over to this very sophisticated espionage web. We're sending them over to these so-called academic exchanges with nice sounding names of like China Institute for Contemporary International Research, KICR, which is the front organization for the Ministry of State Security. Their spies are superbly trained. The lambs we sent over there to be harvested and slaughtered in not a literal sense, but had no preparation for what they were going over to. Many of them were co-ops. I've interviewed a number of them, what happened to them when they went there, the ways they were enticed, seduced, offered money for simple papers at first, just say what the party wants you to say. And then they came back and began infiltrating your academic institutions. And so those floodgates that were open from 2008 to 2016, it's very hard to close them now. It was hard for the first Tsai administration, especially because the DPP coming into power didn't have a lot of experience with getting legislation passed on that. But you got more sophisticated. What you're doing now is light years ahead of what you were doing when I was here back in even 2020. Okay, so there's hope.
There's this document right here, and we know that U.S. seems to also be infiltrated by China in political and media warfares. How's that been going?
Not so good. For 2 years, I advised the Congress of the United States on an investigation by the House Oversight Committee on Chinese Communist Party political warfare against just the U.S. government, not at the state level like they've done in New York State and California. They've had massive successes there and in Michigan, but just at the U.S. government level. After 2 years, this 300-page report came out, and basically, out of 25 agencies that were investigated and had to come in and testify, and a great deal of effort went into investigating what they were doing and what they were not doing, the outcome was an absolute catastrophe in terms of the assessment made of the U.S. government. We are doing very poorly in detecting, deterring, countering, and defeating Chinese Communist Party infiltration and co-option of our own federal government. So that report, that 300-page report on the desk, that's being used ideally by the Trump administration to begin at least patching up some of the holes in our, the floodgates that have been opened in our own country. The problem that I see right now, though, is that President Trump is a little too eager to get that trade deal with Xi Jinping, and is giving preemptively giving concessions that I don't think we need to be giving. And I know that there are military moves that are being made. There's other moves that are being made to make sure that we can confront, deter, and defeat, if necessary, the People's Liberation Army on the military kinetic battlefield. Not so sure that we have what I called for earlier, the policy to fight, the strategy with which we can win that fight, and then everything that falls out of strategy, objectives, strategies, tactics, techniques, procedures, resources, education, which is huge. You've got to start educating an American public that is just as oblivious to what's happening on the political warfare battlefield as many of the people in Taiwan. We've got to start that holistically and systematically, and I don't see that starting yet.
And that is very crucial. Thank you so much, Professor Gershnek, for sharing with us all your meaningful insight. It's very meaningful to us, to our Chinese audience, that awareness must be raised. And as you mentioned so much, that your awareness, your insight shared with us today has helped us strengthen our democratic resilience. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, for having me on the show.